Welcome back to another review. I've got the Nitecore E4K in for testing, and this was sent in via the company for a review. As per usual, we'll go over the box just to show you the key features on this light. I'll go over what's included in this. You get quite a few items with this. Nitecore are usually pretty good with their bundles. There's the user guide, that will be on screen later on. Type C to Type A USB cable. We have the holster. This is very similar to the other Nitecore ones. They just have specific model numbers for different lights, and I get on quite well with them. It's quite a thick material, doubled over on the nylon, so it doesn't feel flimsy. And there's your model number on the back there if you ever need to get a replacement. There is a wrist strap and a spare O-ring included. In addition to that, you also get a clip. You'll have to attach the wrist strap directly to that because there's nowhere to put it on the light. This adapter allows you to use other batteries. Specifically, you can use the 18650 or the CR123As or 16340. You won't get the turbo mode with the 16340 batteries. Also note that they stick out a bit further, so if you're using the 18650s unprotected, which you'll probably want to, you'll have to use spacers with that. Let's take a closer look at the light. Very typical of a Nitecore torch. You have good finishing, bit of knurling on the middle, some grooves, although not particularly heavy grooving on the head. All the dimensions and sizes are on the screen for you. Remember that weight is without the battery. And on the base or tail cap, you just have some markings on that, nothing else there. There is no magnet inside that either, so you can't attach that to things. We'll unscrew it and take the battery out. This is a high capacity 21700 cell. That has a rating of 15 amps, and you'll see the Type C connector at the top there. We'll do a test later on to see the charging speed, but do note compared to the unprotected cells, you're going to need to use spacers because of the size difference. There's your spring at the bottom, and at the top you have a contact point. If they'd have used two springs, we wouldn't have had to have used spacers, so that's a little bit disappointing on that front. There's your 4 LEDs. Just give you a quick shot now to show you the clip attaching it to the body. You can put this in two different directions, facing up or down. It's a pretty compact clip, so you have a choice with that, and it stays in place perfectly fine. It takes a bit of pressure to get that on. Whether or not you want to use that, it's really down to your own taste. I sometimes use the clips with these lights, and this is a perfectly respectable one. Another shot showing you inside the holster. The reason I quite like the Nitecore holsters is they're pretty compact. They're not thick padding on them, so it doesn't really bulk it out too much. Let's move on to the user interface. What I will say is think Nitecore Concept 1 or EC30, and that's pretty much how this light works. And I've got to be honest, it does take a bit of getting used to. The main thing is that you can't change the power level on this when the light is on. That's because you have to push and hold it and then let it cycle through and release. And to me that is a little bit counterintuitive. You do have your instant access to the moonlight mode though. A double press on that will take you to that mode, and it's also pretty easy to get to the turbo mode. You can just push in the switch when it's on and that will take you to the highest output. When the light is on, if you want to get to the strobe mode, just give that a triple press and that will take you into the strobe, and then you can hold it down to cycle through the 3 strobe modes that are included. Got the SOS and beacon with this light as well. If you want to cycle between the daily and tactical modes, just hold the side switch in and rotate the base cap. Here's your battery level indicator. It will flash 1 to 3 times to give you an idea of the battery status. In addition to that, you also have the battery voltage test, so when you unscrew it and tighten up again or put a different battery in, it will flash out with the voltage. As far as the UI experience goes, it's going to be one of those lights that you give it to someone and they're not going to get on that well with it at the start. You can get used to it. I have done with the EC30, but I don't necessarily think it's the most intuitive or the best user interface for this light. There's the user guide on the screen for you that covers the operation of the light, and just do a quick comparison with the MH23 in the middle and the EC30. The E4K is the largest of the lights, though not by much. It's still pretty compact. Very different reflectors on these lights, and you'll get completely different beam patterns off of all of them, and I'll show you some of those a bit later on. What I would say is, compared to the MH23, I would have gone with that double pressure switch, which I think is much easier to get the hang of compared to the E4K or the EC30 user interface. I would have liked to have seen that. Perhaps they didn't have enough space inside the light to do the double switch. Not sure on that one, just something which struck me. I do prefer using the 23 over the E4K. Quick test on the battery, about 900 milliamps, and you'll see the termination came in around 4.17, so it's not the quickest charging battery. Onto the beam shots now. We'll start off at the high level of 1050 lumens. You'll notice a very big spread on this light, very wide beam pattern, and up to the turbo 4400 lumens. I did do a runtime test later on, as you'd expect. Not a huge runtime on the turbo. EC30 has a mixed beam pattern, and the MH23 a bit more focused, and that's where you get that additional range on that light from. I'll run a few more beam shots now, and I'll come back with a few thoughts at the end of the video. Just to give you some of my thoughts with the E4K, in many ways I quite like this light, the small form factor. You also get that extra capacity with the 21700 cells, but there are some definite drawbacks. Quite a short run time in the turbo mode, didn't quite make the 30 seconds in my test. And the other thing for me is the user interface wouldn't have been my choice of UI on this light. That's just a purely personal thing. You can get used to it, it's just not particularly intuitive. I do wish Nitecore would use the same UI on all of their lights, but maybe it's not a problem for you. So whether or not this is going to work for you depends on what you're doing really. If you need that extra run time and you like the floody beam, it isn't a bad little light. If you've got any thoughts on this, do leave a comment below, and thanks for watching the video.